In this video, I'm presenting to you why you should, at the moment, not buy US stocks, but look at certain European stocks. I will tell you in general why you should look at them, why it is really important to look over the big pond and not only invest in the USA. I will tell you today which stocks from Europe are interesting. You probably know the stocks, so this is going to be real interesting to you. I will also tell you which stocks will go up in 2025 because BlackRock showed us a really interesting study here that showed which sectors will go up after rate cuts. So this is going to be really interesting, and let's dive right into it. First of all, who am I? I'm a European stock coach. So I coach people, I teach people how to invest into high quality stocks, but I'm showing you now the European point of view, which could be interesting to you. So if you like my videos, just subscribe. And if you want to see further videos, just let me know in the comments. But now we're going to get going right away from the get-go. So what we're comparing is the S&P 500 from 1988 to the Stocks 600 at the moment. And what we can see is that the average of the PE ratio of the S&P 500 was 17.2. And at the moment, it is at a 22, which means looking at the market, it seems that it is really overvalued. It could also be because of the biggest stocks that we have in the S&P 500. That could be the biggest reason, which means the Magnificent Seven and whatnot. But at the same time, looking at the stock 600, what we see is that the average PE ratio is a 14.2. And at the moment, it is a 13.7, which means that we can maybe get some stocks that are undervalued at the moment in Europe, which doesn't mean that Europe, maybe you think that European companies don't really grow as well, but that is not the case. We're only looking at high quality European stocks. So therefore, first of all, that's point number one, look at European stocks. They might be really interesting, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that there are no interesting US stocks at the moment. You can always find bargains, but this might be the case that you find better bargains in Europe at the moment. All right. And then point number two, BlackRock says, and this is really interesting, I think. BlackRock says, looking at rate cuts, in the year after the first rate cut, what happened is that there are certain sectors that outperformed the other sectors, and looking at a percentage of 80%, which means with a likelihood of 80%, this is going to happen. And the two sectors are, and this is, they looked at it historically, this is healthcare and consumer staples, which also makes sense, right? Because if you cut rates and then you have further rate cuts, and then people want dividend stocks, and mostly these stocks are dividend stocks that pay good dividends, that have raised their dividends, maybe they're dividend kings or just aristocrats, maybe that is the case. But now, I mean, this might be really interesting to you, but now, which European stocks am I talking about? And there is one European stock that you guys might know, one European stock that you guys might know, and this is the number one I'm presenting to you here, and it is Nestle. You maybe know Nestle. It's a consumer staples company, which could also be interesting because obviously it's also in the sector I just mentioned, consumer staples, and it is in Europe. And they're in a little crisis at the moment because they lowered their revenue outlook from 4% to 2%, which means that's why the stock dropped. And at the same time, their problem here is because they had to raise prices, and they don't have the cheapest products. So the people would rather go at the moment and buy other products because they're cheaper. So what they're doing at the moment, they're restructuring their products and their board. That's what they said they're doing. And they're giving discounts on their products, and that's how they want to get consumers back in. That's what they're doing. Looking at the historical PE ratio, we're looking at a 19 and 20. 19 to 20, right? At the moment, we're at a 17.5, which is really interesting. And price to cash flow, we're looking at a historical number of 15.3. At the moment, we're at a 13, which is also really interesting. And looking at the last 5 years, it's even cheaper, more undervalued, looking at the PE ratio and the price to cash flow ratio. Over the last 5 years, the PE ratio was 23. At the moment, we have a 17.5, as I said already. And the price to cash flow, we're looking at 18.5 in the last 5 years, and at the moment we have a 13. So it looks like the stock is a buy at the moment. So it looks really, really interesting. You just have to check that you don't. I wouldn't necessarily, if you choose to buy the stock, I wouldn't buy an ADR, American Depository Receipt. I would try through the through a Swiss exchange, actually try to buy the real stock so you have real ownership in the company. That is something I think is really, really important. And stock number 2 I'm mentioning is LVMH, which is Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. This time it's not consumer staples, but it is consumer discretionary. And they're also in a little crisis at the moment because a big part of their revenue comes from China. Chinese economy at the moment, they're in trouble. They have problems. They have a real estate crisis. So the people would rather save their money instead of buying luxury goods, for example. And what do? LVMH, they sell luxury goods. And this is a big Chinese thing here at the moment. We're looking at 30% that come, looking at the revenue that come from Asia, and a big part of that is obviously from China. And now what they're doing is obviously they're trying to restructure everything. They're looking at how to make the company better at the moment and how to get the sales back in. And historically, it's not extremely cheap, but relatively cheap or fair looking at the PE ratio. Historically, you're looking at a 22, and at the moment we have a 21.7. But looking at the price to cash flow ratio, historically, it's not looking extremely good, but it's also not looking like it's extremely overvalued. That's not the case. But looking at the last 5 years, PE ratio and price to cash flow ratio, both at the moment are extremely cheap in comparison to the last 5 years, because the PE ratio was 27. At the moment, it's 21.7. Looking at the cash flow, the price to cash flow, not free cash flow, the price to cash flow over the last 5 years, looking at 18. At the moment, we have a 16. So this also looks like it's really, really interesting. If you want to buy some stock here, you could also add the first a couple of shares here, and then if it drops again, because it could get cheaper, that's what I think, you could add some more stocks. I have to tell you, I am invested into Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. I'm not invested into Nestle at the moment because from the European point of view, with both stocks, it's a little problem because you have to pay a little bit more tax here for both stocks, especially on the dividend, but that's a European thing. You have to figure out what it is like for you in America, for you guys in America, or in England, wherever you are at the moment, if you're from an English-speaking country, or if you are from Europe somewhere. It really, really, really depends. Now, tell me in the comments what you think about everything I said, about the historical PE ratios, the average I just mentioned, about the stocks that are supposed to go up in the year after rate cuts in the US, after the Fed cut the rates, and also what do you think about these two stocks? I would be really interested in it. And if you like my videos, subscribe and comment in the comment section, and I see you in the next video. Bye-bye.